Welcome everyone to the first episode of Candid Kevin, and this special series that I'm coming out with is an open forum whereby all of you in the audience can respond to a community post that I make every time we hit a new subscriber milestone. And then I'll come on and I'll share my appreciation with all of you and answer your questions on a video just like we're doing here. So hopefully this will be really fun and engaging way to get to know each other just a little bit better. The first question comes from Bølt. He's a good friend of mine and this received the most upvotes by everyone. So let's see what he has to ask here. I've seen this talked about on Discord a little bit, but my question will be, do you ever find the editing process boring or tiring? The high quality of your videos, the settings you use, and the editing itself makes me think you're very passionate about how things look. That's very true. Even when a lot of people get burnt out due to the editing process on YouTube. So, do I find the whole creative content creation process to be boring and tiring? Well, there are a number of frustrations that occur, and those are all from a technical standpoint, right? Because my setup here is not very high tech. I'm recording myself from one cell phone and I'm playing on another cell phone. So there's no professional cameras here. I'm using just a clip-on mic for the audio in my videos. And my machine that I use to edit and process this is over a decade old. So there's certainly not a great threshold of technology that's required to come on and do YouTube content, and it's really all about the ideas. And that's what started this whole journey, feeling like there wasn't much content being created to show players who are free to play, who are newer players perhaps, the ropes and how things are different from a lot of the players that you see out there that do enormously successful things, whether they are pay to win or even just gold pass only. Being a gold pass player is significantly different from being a free to play player. And I know from the recent poll that many of you filled out, nearly a quarter of my audience is free to play. And I'm so thankful for the support, not just from the free to play, but everyone in general. So it's the ideas that matter the most. And through all those frustrations that exist on a technical level when things don't go right, the payoff comes from when I interact with all of you, right? When I enter the comments section after a new video is posted and I see comments that are like, hey, you really helped change my perspective about the game. I was able to save up my rubies for the first time and obtain my most favorite character. I mean, that's what this is all about, okay? So any little frustration that happens in terms of whether or not it's boring, it's never boring. There's believe me, there's always a new issue that comes about. It's like if you can't think it up, it's going to happen. That's just the way things go, right? What can go wrong will go wrong, but you have to be a little bit creative and adaptable in those situations. So thank you for the question, Bølt. That was a really good one. The next question is from Russian Thotbot. He says, hey Kevin, what is the best control configuration as far as performance, responsiveness, and combination optimization? Should I go with smart steering or no? Well, this is a very good question, and it's actually one that I've seen asked more frequently in the community here. And let me just share an image on screen of what my control setup is. I don't use manual drift. By default, I use the steer function because I find it personally to be the most intuitive, right? Like if I'm backing my car out the driveway or something like that, it's going to go the way that the wheels are pointed. Manual drift is kind of unusual because there's no situation where you can take a straight line, right? You have to be hopping back and forth. Otherwise, you're going to be curving to the right or curving to the left. And I don't find that intuitive at all. It is optimal probably from a combo standpoint if you're comfortable with the control scheme to use manual drift. But it's not something that I'm comfortable with. And I hear quite a bit actually. They're like, hey, I'm surprised that you use just the default steering. And other people find it comfortable to use that as well. So ultimately, the answer to your question is what suits you best is what's optimal, right? I'm not going to preach about which one is better or not. However, in terms of smart steering, that's an interesting one, especially if you're playing multiplayer, because a lot of or even time trials, because what will happen is a lot of shortcuts will require you to go off-road, especially like one that comes to mind is Sunset Wilds or Yoshi Circuit, where you see some of these very competitive players go off-road and they can hop through the grass section or through the sand section, and it's a massive shortcut even without a mushroom. It's really amazing to see what the players come up with out there. And in situations like that, if you work on it, you don't want smart steering on. However, me personally, being not really admittedly the best skill out there, I do use smart steering because it just gives me that extra layer of comfort. When I'm going through a track and racing, I'm thinking, you know, how can I maximize the amount of actions that's comfortable for what I can do in terms of my finger dexterity, but also if things go awry, I just want that comfort in knowing that I'm not going to sabotage my own run. So smart steering is comfortable for myself. However, there are certainly situations, especially if you are a very talented player, you don't want smart steering on. Paul York asks, hello mate, holy moly Batman, yes. You're at 700 subscribers. Wow, I know. Grown quickly, man. Couldn't have happened to a nicer bloke. Thank you, Paul. My question to you, what's your plan for the channel next year? You'll be at 1K by then, I have no doubt. Let's hope so. I don't make presumptions about that sort of thing. Would be great to race you, bud. Take care. Well, in terms of racing me, I do occasionally have friend list openings. It's sporadic based on the activity of the players. Generally, I like to have a full list of players that will send daily greeting coins, although I know certain people have a lot of responsibilities in the real world. So as long as people are sending a majority of days, that's comfortable with me, especially if I know the individual. Certainly, I like to have my actual friends, the people who I'm closest with, who I'm talking with about all these moves, to be on my friend list. And I do open that up to everyone and anyone that's out there. Normally, I've done that on Discord, since that's where I'm most active and I can get to know all of you better. So it's, you know, if you do want to have an opening in the friend list, be a member on the Kart Life Discord and just be on the lookout. It can happen at any time. I just added 2 friends recently. In terms of what's to come on the channel, well, I've so far only presented Mario Kart Tour content, and for the foreseeable future, I am a Mario Kart Tour player. I don't have any plans on discontinuing that. I know the content in the game, depending upon the kind of player you are. If you're a new player, there's a treasure trove of content right now in the game, because these old retro tracks may not be old for you, or these pipes have greater odds than we ever had for players who've been playing for over a year in the game in 2020, or certainly in 2019 for players who go back to day one. So I do plan on covering it. If the passion is there within the community, I feed off the passion, and definitely you have been such a massive support of what I do here, and I'm greatly appreciative of that. With that being said, there may be a chance for this to become more of a variety channel. Certainly my chief interest in gaming has always been Pokemon, and I've taken a bit of a sabbatical from Pokemon, but there are certainly some exciting things on the horizon for that franchise, and I may be looking at covering some of that down the road, independent of what I'm doing with Mario Kart Tour. So certainly, if any of you out there are fans of Pokemon, if not, maybe I'll make one out of you. So if anything, we will continue going on with Mario Kart Tour, and there could be greater variety to come, is the answer. The next question up comes from Rene Kuil. Congrats, by far the most informative MKT channel there is, and while keeping it entertaining to watch as well, which is a hard thing to do, so big GG there. Thank you very much, Rene. That's a very kind thing to say. Questions: biggest mistake you made with your account? For instance, spending tickets into worthless driver, And if you start over with all the knowledge you have now, would you do things differently? Okay, that's two wonderful questions. Now, biggest mistake I made. Look, I'm not somebody who has regrets, particularly with a mobile game, right? Everything you do feeds into the knowledge that you have, and you just continue to learn as you go along. And the same is true with this game as it is in the real world, right? So certainly there have been mistakes, but I wouldn't say I regret any of them. Just to note, I would say actually the thing that hurt me the most was the week that I invested tickets into Donkey Kong Jr., SNES, the Zoom Room, and the Dream Glider. It was week 1 of the Kamek Tour, and I couldn't get the frenzy luck for 2 hours. I got 2 coin frenzies in like 2 hours of play or something like that, and I had never seen anything like it. It seemed like they had adjusted the rates, and this was in the final several hours of the ranked mode period, the window in which the standings are completed. So that was enormously stressful, and I was talking about it with Justin, one of our longtime members here, in real time, and he said that the reason why he recommended those investments that I made are because those are items that contributed towards my endgame goal. So while the move was completely a waste, I lost all the value from that. They were items that powered my inventory moving forward. So I've won several ranked modes since then, thanks to DK Jr., thanks to the Zoom Room and the Dream Glider. So I don't regret those moves now, but in the moment, considering the circumstances of what happened, that was incredibly hurtful. The only other mistake that I made, I really only use tickets if they're going to have a guaranteed outcome that I desire. So we could say that investing into Diddy Kong, the super, mind you, there's no high end of Diddy Kong. Hopefully someday there will be. He hasn't been in ranked mode in nearly 600 days. I have him at level 7 in triple capped, so 975 base points. We could say that those 16 super driver cap tickets were a waste in Diddy Kong. Granted, the purchases, no tickets were spent to take him to level 7. Those were all shop purchases. So that it is an inundation of coin usage that I put into Diddy Kong. But look, he's my favorite driver, so of course I'm going to do it. I haven't gotten value out of the super cap tickets, and I won't now anyway, even if they put him in ranked mode, because that item is now on my account at that strength, so they're going to pair me up with opponents that are just that much more difficult now. So I lost value in the algorithm, but that's not a loss, that's a win, because since they haven't put him in ranked mode, I haven't even been able to regret it. So kind of a win in a loss, mind you. Now, the second part of your question is, if you would start over with all the knowledge you have now, would you do things differently? Well, when I was starting out, I really had a poor conception of the game. Not terribly poor, mind you, but this is something that I feel for new players at right now. And that is, if you're just logging into the game now, the game does very little to give you direction, right? If you're not following content on my channel or on one of the other amazing content creators out there, or if you're in a community, Discord, Reddit, any number of these places, Facebook, then I don't know how you can figure out how to get tickets in your shop. I mean, it must be so intimidating to do. I didn't even know these things existed until I joined servers in Discord, and then I started to learn these things. And I had a lot of misconceptions along the way, such as I thought, like, okay, when I max out Donkey Kong and Diddy Kong, I thought that any time that they would have been in my shop, I would get a super driver ticket, which we know is not true, of course. What ends up happening is that just increases the frequency that you see all of the other items in that pool. So for example, that's just the normal super driver slot, such as Mario, Peach, Yoshi, Bowser, blah, 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 right? So no tickets were found when getting those characters, but those are still things that I would want to purchase and invest in. A perfect example of that is when they increased the level to level 7. I did the same thing I did when I was just a newbie, right? I still bought all of the Donkey Kongs and the Diddy Kongs, so I wouldn't view that as a mistake. But what I did do is I made sure to put a more concerted effort into purchasing out those gliders, right? Especially the super gliders. Those are the ones that will give you ranked usage from time to time, so you'll have more realistic return value off of that coin investment that you're making. As well as, I mean, the normal gliders, if you're just starting out now, I wouldn't even think about normal gliders, honestly. I haven't maxed out my normal gliders yet. They're almost never in ranked mode, and when they are, they're often counterfeited by better options. So I would, unless you're a long-time player or a gold pass player who has a lot of resources on your hand, I would avoid the normal gliders entirely. And then you want to be thinking about one high-end in particular that you want to max out for the daily selects. It's all about the daily selects. That is how you can mold your gameplay experience moving forward. There are some players out there who have been playing for as long as I have, or even longer than I have, and they have nowhere near the kind of tickets that I do, because they learned too late about the daily selects. So that's what I would say. I'm thankful that I learned that stuff early enough in my experience so that it didn't hamper it long term. The next question comes from JacktheDarkBlueYoshi, a fellow content creator. Thank you for the question, Jack. How do you determine the value of drivers, carts, and gliders? Great question. Now, this is something like, look, okay, there's a lot of resources that are out there that will tell you the rankings of drivers, carts, and gliders, right? And they're all amazing resources, and they each fulfill a specific niche and the type of information that it's trying to describe to us. Ultimately, what I try to instruct on the channel here is that your inventory is a very unique thing, right? Like one of the previous questions said, worthless driver. There is no worthless driver if you form your account around it, right? Like my whole gameplay strategy is about the Kong family of drivers. But I honestly believe I could be enormously successful if Santa Mario was my most beloved driver in the game, right? I could make it work. Fewer number of tracks, fewer ranked exposure. You just adapt and compensate accordingly so that the coverage and the frequency of the ranked usage fits in line with what you're doing with Santa Mario, for instance. So everything is individualized, and you want to take into account the number of tracks those items have, the kinds of overlap they have with other things in your inventory, and then I would build it out like a web or like a tree with branches, right? And you want to fill that in as best as you can. So the value is very individualized, right? There's no, I don't believe in like there being something that's like better than everything. Certainly, if you are pay to win, if you're playing in the top tier, it's much more relevant to you to be only like Boomerang, Coinbox, Lucky 7, Giant Banana, and call it a day, right? I understand that entirely. However, if you're a new player, if you're a free-to-play player, or if you're a late entry gold pass only player, then the end games that we're talking about having like all of the Coinbox drivers or all of the Boomerang drivers and all these elite drivers completely maxed out so that they're counterfeiting the value of more niche selections is impossible. You'll never reach it. Take my word on it. I've been playing now for almost a year and a half, and I've only amassed, currently I have 29 high-end driver tickets, and if we add in all the ones that I've used, that's still probably about 50 high-end driver tickets, maybe 60 high-end driver tickets I've had a lifetime on my account. That's not even enough to max out half of the Coinbox drivers, let alone all of them and all of the other elite special skills that are out there. Next question up is from Jonathan Roth. Congrats on 700, thank you. Also, what is the potential value of city characters and items that debuted in special pipes? Great question, Jonathan. I've talked a little bit on the channel here about items that debut in special pipes and that they're more likely to obtain value up front, right? Approximately 50%, even greater than 50% of items that debuted in a special pipe will receive the paywall tracks, which are the brand new tracks that debut that have a limited portion of top tier items at their disposal, right? That's why I call it the paywall, because generally these items are things that you have to go into the pipe for or you have to purchase in a paid bundle. right? It's not entirely paywalled. You can do it free to play, as you've seen. Donkey Kong Jr. has gotten some buffs. I also have had Toadette Explorer come in clutch for me a few times as well, and I've put out value alerts on things like Daisy Swimwear and Rosalina Tanuki and Waluigi Vampire, just to name a few. So the value of special pipe items, they're going to get the paywall tracks earlier in their value rather than later, such as Birdo Black, who was just a weekly spotlight item, didn't really start becoming a paywall warrior until around the 5th or 6th tour she was in, and then it just was consistent for a very long time. But if we look at items like King Bob-omb Gold, for instance, came out right out of the gate with the Sydney track the next tour. And we see Rosalina Tanuki here has the RMX Ghost Valley 1 RT. So those items typically will have those paywall tracks up front. And the reason why I think that Nintendo does that is because since they're not a guaranteed item, even a smaller percentage of the player base is going to have access to them, so that they can put them in more frequently and earlier in their lifespan, and it won't jeopardize the kind of sales and pipe numbers that they would need to see on the weekly pipes that are accommodating those brand new tracks at the time that they debut in those tours. And the other part of the question that you asked was on the value of city characters. Well, originally, my philosophy on the value of city characters is that they had a lower value, right? However, Nintendo just recently at the tail end of this year has shown a propensity to compensate the value of these city tracks just by buffing these characters more. We saw this with Baby Mario Koala, who debuted in Sydney, and we saw this with Luigi Painter, who's now over 30 tracks, who debuted in Paris 3. So the value of city drivers I don't think is as bleak as it once was, and if there is a city driver, take Waluigi Vampire for instance, I don't think the fact that he has a couple city tracks in his early value is going to hamper his long-term value. The long-term value will be based on the polling data of how many players out there in the population have that item, and they're going to be selecting characters more frequently that are obtained less by the player base, so that they could be more profitable at those times. There's no confirmation. Nintendo hasn't disclosed and say that's absolutely how they have it done, but it makes a lot of sense, and a majority of the players feel that way. Next one up is from Reddie, my 100th subscriber. Back in the spring, I remember that, just like it was yesterday. Keeping it light, who is your favorite Mario character? Non-Kong Division. Good one, Reddie. And your favorite Pokemon? Congrats on 700. Well, okay, I could go a few different ways with this. Certainly, I loved seeing Kamek come to the game. Now, Kamek isn't a personal favorite of mine, but just the kind of hype and excitement that was injected into the community, into this game, it was infectious. So Kamek does hold a special place for me, even though he's not a personal favorite. If we're going with the OGs, I have to probably go with Yoshi. I don't know, I'm just a little bit sentimental because I did come in during the Yoshi tour, and I got Yoshi Egg Hunt in my first 10 pull. And I always, when I was growing up, Jurassic Park was a big deal. So I am a little bit partial to the dinosaur there. And the favorite Pokemon, well, the favorite Pokemon, you've seen him on the channel actually, it's Chimchar, right? We haven't seen Chimchar since he walked off with the camera when Nintendo did not celebrate the 40th anniversary of the Donkey Kong franchise. That was a tough moment for us on the channel here, but maybe Chimchar will make a future appearance in another video someday. Probably not until they bring a Kong, though. In terms of other Pokemon, since I play competitive, I'd probably say the one that players would associate with me the most is likely to be Blissey. And that says a thing or two about my playstyle as a Pokemon player. Remolizzo, hey Kevin, aside from MKT, what other hobbies do you enjoy? This is a fantastic question. I love outdoors in nature, so walks both in the woods, on the beach, photography also of nature, like sunrises, sunsets, all of that is something that I'm greatly passionate about, as well as not just, so if we look at gaming in general, Mario Kart, certainly one of the appeals to me is that it does have a lot of probability. It's a probability-based game, right, with the pipe pulls and also with the frenzy chances and even the single item chances. It's all probability, right? So also, you know, the other game that I played competitively for over a decade was Pokémon, as Reddie referenced above, and that's a game that has a lot of probability, right? In addition to the skill elements of building a team and competitive battling and the strategy that takes place on that level. And aside from that, also, I have a background playing poker. If you saw the first pipe pull video I did in the Bowser versus DK tour, I talked about how when I was in college, I had spent a semester as a professional gambler playing poker, going to the casinos, and I was very successful with it at the time, and I was very thankful that I stuck in school, that I was so close to the finish that it was easy for me to go ahead and get my degree, because when you crush the tables on the weekend and then you're waking up, you know, 9 a.m. morning class on Monday morning, and you're thinking like, what am I doing here, right? It's like, you know, I want to get back into the lab, review the math so that I can be even more prepared when I go out next weekend, sort of thing, right? And I've been playing a home game for 15, 20 years, something like that. So definitely another one of my interests as well. And also there's sports too. I played sports as a kid. I was really good at basketball, but the athleticism didn't hold up for me, and but I still do follow sports quite a bit. So those of you on Discord, we've had a lot of extensive conversations about sports, particularly basketball, professional NBA basketball. I also really like the NFL. I follow tennis, to a lesser extent golf, baseball, and things of that kind. But yeah, basketball is the big one. And just as kind of like a catch-all beyond that, it's just reading and learning things in general, right? Like one thing that I became fascinated with, even after I got my degree, was astrophysics, and it's like, you know, I just binged all of these topics on that topic. So just learning about life, the world that we inhabit, each other, and what drives us, and all of those topics are just fascinating, and I can't learn enough, honestly. The next question comes from Crazi, and they ask, how long do you think Mario Kart Tour will last? Will it go on forever? Well, it certainly won't go on forever. I personally feel that Nintendo has a 5-year plan for Mario Kart Tour. I have no way of knowing this. I don't know anyone at Nintendo. But based on the trajectory of how things have been going, I could see that they have a 5-year plan for the game. Certainly, if a 3-year plan feels like it's too soon, it feels like they have too many avenues unexplored. And certainly from the beta testing, you know, the levels went all the way up to 10. I know no one even wants to hear about level 8 being a thing, since level 7 was detrimental to a number of players' outlooks on the game itself. But I definitely see this game having legs for a few more years, particularly since we don't see a next-gen Nintendo console coming in, and Mario Kart 8 is still on the top charts in terms of sales. And they've been very patient and cautious with developing and putting out a Mario Kart 9. Many of you feel that Mario Kart Tour is the Mario Kart 9, but I do see a clear division between Mario Kart 8 and Mario Kart Tour. A lot of players would love to see Mario Kart 8 tracks in this game. I would too, but honestly, the amount of development hours that would take to go into that, and it doesn't make sense if they're still trying to sell Mario Kart 8. So I see this game as having a 5-year shelf life, but it could be even longer. I mean, they could have a 10-year plan for the game. I personally think that would be unrealistic given what we've seen over the last few years. Chicken Leg asks, I want to know how much of a gamer you are, Kevin. Aside from Mario Kart Tour, what consoles have you had in the past? I've personally had the original Nintendo, the Super Nintendo, the N64, which we won in a cereal box. Wow, that's pretty epic. Congrats. I've also had the PlayStation, PS2, PS3, and PS4. I feel old. I'm 33. Well, a lot of us are right around that age, so there's no reason to feel old. Age is just a number. In terms of how much of a gamer I am, well, okay, a lot of people in my generation who I was growing up with played video games before I did. I was someone who didn't get right into the video game scene right away. My first exposure to video games was with the Game Boy, and I had, I think it was Pokemon Pinball, but I got Pokemon Red at the same time. So it was really the whole Pokemon fever that got me into gaming, and then I got the N64 and played a lot of sports games on that, things like Madden, NBA Live, Diddy Kong Racing, right? That's a big one. I spent so many hours in Diddy Kong Racing, as well as Mario Kart 64, but in my humble opinion, Diddy Kong Racing was the superior kart racer of that generation, as well as things like Pokemon Stadium and DK 64 too. DK64, but I think I went up to the final level in that. I don't even know if I beat DK64. So after the N64, I had, well, that would have been the GameCube, right? Yeah, so I definitely got involved with that. I remember playing, of course, Mario Kart Double Dash, Super Smash Bros. Melee, Pokemon Coliseum. That may have been the best Pokemon title in the series to date. It's not even a main series, it's a spin-off. But I really love the mature elements in that game, as well as, what was it, Donkey Kong Jungle Beat. That was really fun with the bongos. Yeah, that was a good one. that one I beat, and I really felt the whole True Kong experience from that one. I also had the PS2, so I played some first-person shooters as well. I'm going back to my N64 days. GoldenEye, that was like a favorite at like Thanksgiving parties with family and whatnot. The World Is Not Enough, which was its successor, and then that went on to the PS2. So like Agent Under Fire, I think, was one of the names. So yeah, I am a 007 fan as well. So PS2, PS3. I had, and PS4 as well. And the Tales series, that's a big one. I use some of the music from the Tales series in these videos, actually, because I just, very amazing soundtrack music that I feel fits a number of different moods and scenarios. So Tales of Symphonia was a big one on the GameCube. That was my entry into that series. But in terms of like a major gamer, I'm not a huge gamer per se, like from the truest sense. Like I never really got into Zelda. I never really got into Mario, actually, which is a little bit ironic given that I'm doing Mario Kart Tour. So really, like, Pokemon was the big one. And I actually fell out of love with the main series Pokemon, because they did become repetitive, and then also getting involved in the competitive community over at Smogon, and they use simulators to do all this battling, right? So instead of like training up all your Pokemon, breeding that takes hours and hours of time, it's a level playing field. You just select your Pokemon, your moveset, your stats, and then it's like an equal situation where the best player will win. In most situations, anyway. So for a long time, that's all I did, was just playing on these simulators in the top levels of competition for Pokemon. The last game I actually played, like AAA budget game, was Horizon, which was phenomenal. I loved Horizon. That was a great game, and I think the new one is coming out next year, right, for PS5 and PS4, I think. Something like that. So maybe I'll check that one out as well. But Actually, I platinumed Horizon. I was so engrossed by it. I was completely immersed in that whole situation, and actually seeing the trailer for the upcoming Pokemon Legends Arceus really reminds me of Horizon, like diving into the grass and whatnot, and like kind of like stalking the wildlife, although in Horizon it was the robotic dinosaurs, right? So hopefully that satisfies my chops in terms of being a gamer. DBMtheOne says, "Hey Kevin, congrats on 700 subscribers. Thank you very much. What new retro tracks would you like to see in MKT? Like most people, new retro tracks are one of the most important features they can add in the game." 100% DBM. You are right on the money there. Given that the Space Tour is coming out next, and it looks like we're just going to be receiving another RT variant, along with just an alt character, is certainly going to be off-putting to a certain amount of players out there. And retro tracks are a way to kick up that nostalgia and also provide new content. So I couldn't agree more with you that we do need more retro tracks. What would I like to see? Well, my favorite track in the entire Mario Kart franchise is DK Mountain from the GameCube, right? Double Dash. That's my favorite track. But is that the track that I would like to see the most? Perhaps not, honestly. And that's because I never played Super Circuit. And the Mario Kart Tour team has done such an amazing job porting in Super Circuit tracks. This is like basically like Super Circuit HD, in my opinion. A lot of the knock on Mario Kart Tour originally was like, oh, it's just like Mario Kart 7 or it's Mario Kart 7.5. Really, I feel that they've tapped into Super Circuit so well, and that speaks to a certain nostalgia of older players, but also fewer people even have had exposure to them. So for me, something like Riverside Park would be a completely new experience. I would probably like to see that even more than my favorite track of all time, which is DK Mountain. Otherwise, it's really just variety, right? Like Sherbet Land from GameCube would also be really good. Nice soundtrack for that track. Maybe we'll see that in the Winter Tour, one of the Winter Tours coming up. What else is there? Basically any kind of desert themed track. They're not my favorite, but there is a glaring lack of them in the game. We only have Calamari Desert and Calamari's Desert 2, which was a really nice modification of that. So they've done an incredible job on what they have done, but it's just that we would like to see more of that. And if anything, I think that speaks to the credit of the development team and how well that they've done with that. So it's like we want that renewed experience as much as we can. Antenion says, "Hello Kev, congrats on reaching the new milestone. I'm sure 1000 is just a matter of time." Thank you for that. My question to you is, if a new Kong alt or family member arrives to the game, aside from maximizing its set, would you go for an ACR run in that tour? I guess you'll go all in for a DK ACR badge, but that's what came through my mind. Again, congratulations on your wonderful work. Thank you so much for that. Absolutely, I would be doing, well, first of all, it depends on the arrangement of when that's released, right? So as you mentioned, I would be wanting to maximize its whole set, but what would the whole set look like? Believe it or not, every Kong that's come to the game has lacked an entire high-end set, right? They always throw in these super spotlights for the Kongs for whatever reason. It kind of blows my mind. But Dixie Kong had the pink flower glider, which was an old super. Funky Kong had the super bolt buggy, which was a new cart, but it was a super. And then DK Jr. SNES had the question mark block glider, which was an old super as well. So I would certainly hope that if a new Kong came to the game, that we would get a triad of high-end items in the spotlight so that I could maximize that in an ACR run. If they're using a super spotlight or an old item, that would be a major turnoff for doing that. Also, it would depend on who's on the badge, right? Like you mentioned, it has to be Diddy Kong or DK a Kong, anything, mind you. It would have to be on the badge for that. I wouldn't put forth the run. As you know, when you first accomplished your top 1000 ACR run in the Frost Tour, which was incredible because your loadouts were actually less powerful than mine. And I was like, when I looked at your inventory, I was like, that's remarkable. Like, I could have made the top 1,000 if I put the time in, certainly with less stress than it would have taken you in that circumstance. But honestly, if I'm not going to be displaying the badge, which I have the Diddy Kong character badge is mine, and I wouldn't display a anything top ACR badge over that. It just, I mean, that speaks too much to the kind of player that I am, that character means to me. So it would have to be a Kong on the ACR badge. Otherwise, ACR run is totally out of the picture. And then of course it depends on, you know, my time availability during that tour as well. I remember when the Queenof Tour rolled around and Sammy D tried for the top 100, but it was during a really busy, tumultuous time for him, and he was just a little bit shy of the top 100 mark there. So certainly if it was a comparable situation for myself in which I wouldn't have enough time, you know, perhaps not, but given the large mountain of tickets that I've stocked up on, I mean, I have an insurance policy on top of an insurance policy. The goal would be to not even have to grind for it, right? It would just be, you know, totally blitz the tickets into the items and then just have fun with it, right? Like, I wouldn't even be expecting to use the spreadsheet and the other resources that a lot of players make use of, just because I think that I could really overcook it at that stage. Next question comes from Rabie Tarakji. Now that you've pretty much reached your potential with the Kongs, what is your investment strategy moving forward? Now, this is a very wonderful question. And to answer it, I'm not going to, you know, come up with some big answer. It's honestly, in terms of drivers, I don't have a plan. Look, it's okay if you don't have a plan. Having no plan is better than having a bad plan, right? You want to make sure that you're executing things that are in a way that are most open-ended and most fertile for your continued success in the game. That's what I talk a lot about here on the channel. So not having a plan with what drivers I'm going to invest in, it's okay. Look, I've had so many players write to me and say, like, I wish I was as passionate about a set of drivers as you are about the Kongs, because they have all these tickets and they don't know what they're using them on, and they feel like they're doing something wrong by not using them. It's like, no, you're not doing anything wrong by not using them. That's what you're supposed to be doing. It's using them without knowing what you're doing. That's the problem. So that's one side to answer your question. And the other side is that I do have a plan for the karts and gliders, and I have been executing that at a snail's pace, and that's based on its ranked exposure. I'm not going to invest all of the moves that I plan on making all in one foul swoop. I'm going to be doing that as needed, as dictated by ranked mode, and that way I can take back the maximum amount of value return off of my investment from these tickets and the coins that I've spent obtaining them. MrDiamond Plays, MDP, KG. If you were to make any change or improvements to MKT, what would it be? Oh boy, that's a question. Well, I can refer you immediately to my 3 ways to save Mario Kart Tour video. And instead of having you go back and watch that whole thing, I'll just reiterate them here. The first one was better community engagement. If they could better understand how players in the community feel and what they're seeing, what they want to see. Look, I'm not expecting any developer to completely cater to its players, but to have an understanding and a compromise. We need to have a compromise here, and that will keep the chain of goodwill intact. And I feel like that's been on the rocks at times, right? They've shown amazing goodwill at times, right? Like when that login error had occurred, they gave us the 45 rubies. That was huge. That was right after I talked about better community engagement. And then Queenof was incredible, right? That was the #1 thing that a lot of players wanted to see, and it came to the game. We need to see that a little bit more frequently. I'm not saying like this needs to happen every 2 months, but like more than once a year. Like, let's think about like maybe once every 4 months, once every 6 months, like seasonally, right? Just have, they could, okay, so here's the deal. Let's take a step back. And let me just say that like a game like Pokemon Go, they have events rolling constantly that the players often had talked about feeling burnt out. We're burnt out from desiring, like waiting for things, right? It's like, you know, certainly there's a lot to do in Mario Kart Tour in terms of like getting your daily coins, getting the grand stars, the tour gifts, the tokens. Yeah. We all get that, but we're talking about like what can we actually get with those things that we're acquiring, right? It's like we're constantly waiting, like where's the new retro track? Where's the new driver? So, you know, like it's been 14 months since they came out with a Kong driver. That's terrible, honestly. It's really terrible. And unfortunately, a lot of players who, you know, are fans of DK and fans of these other characters, like Bowser fans, who are fans of the villains in general, we need more villains, right? It was great to see that they did Waluigi. It's like, let's get the Kong alt in there. Let's get the Wario alt in there. I mean, let's get the Bowser Jr. alt in there, right? I mean, at least, look, here's the thing. At least one per year, right? Just to sustain that motivation. Like, for example, they did the Bowser versus DK tour in the point in the calendar when they had the Jungle Tour in the first year, and they provided no new driver. So it's like, are the Kong fans going to have to wait until May 2022 to get a new driver? It's like nobody's going to want to contribute and support a product like that. They're just not. And that's why, like, if Nintendo thinks that they're being really smart by saying, hey, look, the poll data for Mario is the highest, so we have to keep coming out with Marios, well, that same genius should take a look at the user activity and say, user activity has been going down. We have to continually try to dangle things out for new players, for Gold Pass members, to keep them playing this game. Well, maybe, you know, you are getting more polls for Mario, but anyone who's not polling specifically for Mario is dipping. You're losing them. You at least got to have one per year for these different characters. Like, yeah, it might be hard to relate. Like, if you're a fan of Rosalina's had a new character come in every year. Like, would the Rosalina fans be happy if they had to wait 14 months, 15 months, like the DK and Wario fans? They'd quit too. So, I mean, they need to take care of their players and listen to their players more. The other things that I talked about were the coin box overlap problem, right? Because 1/6 of the drivers that come into the game are coin box drivers. And then only 1/6 of the non-coin box drivers have less than 50% overlap with coin box drivers. So if we're talking about, like, let's talk about this poll data, right? Like, why aren't people polling for Waluigi Vampire, for instance? Well, you know, you could talk about the skill, maybe the character, whatever, but it's like, maybe his tracks just are not good for the people that would be looking to poll on him. Like, hey, I have a coin box driver on like half of these tracks. I'm going to skip on it. I don't really need it in ranked mode, and I don't think I'll need it in the future. That's what people say. It's like, well, give those characters an elite special skill and see what happens, right? Like, I mean, they seemed to know that when they brought Funky Kong in the game. They gave him banana barrels, which most people consider to be trash. I think banana barrels is a decent special skill. I wouldn't say it's a top tier special skill, but it's a lot better than people give it credit for. And it's like they knew that that was going to sell like hotcakes. So they didn't even bother giving it Giant Banana, which would have made it a guaranteed success, mind you. So, and then as already discussed, the character variation, right? To keep, when you purchase a game like Mario Kart or Super Smash, how many players out there are Mario mains, right? That's maybe how Nintendo and Mario Kart Tour should be thinking about this, right? You're maining these other characters, right? Like Toad, like there's like a huge fan base for Toads. And already for Toads, it's been since February, since the last new one. So it's already, the fatigue is setting in for everyone who's not a Mario fan. And then if you're a Mario fan, you feel the fatigue because you constantly have to pull for these things. And they're all given marginal value. So, and that's the consequence of that. If they did fewer Mario characters, they would all demand a greater premium in terms of track coverage, so everyone would be happy. And I think the developers could make this float in terms of increasing their revenue too, because if things aren't overlapping with coin boxes much and there's more variety and more elite skills going on, maybe some of these more niche characters, you would have an ecosystem, an economy that is just booming. But for whatever reason, they like to go with their guaranteed things, like they know coin box will sell and they know Mario will sell, and then everything else is kind of like they just take a bath on it. The way I look at it, and I've gone through the numbers enough. I think there is an alternative, and they're just unwilling to explore that. Ryan KR4 says, hello, I've noticed that you talk about coins per ruby in some of your videos, and I was wondering, what does it mean and how do you calculate it? Great question, Ryan. I talked about this in the resource masterclass, coins per ruby, and what that is it's a conversion factor, and a conversion factor is relating two units, right? And in this case, two different resources to one another. So basically, when you pull on a pipe, you're using your rubies for the pipe, right? But the pipe contains items. These are high ends, supers, and normals. So for a standard 100 pipe, you have 6 high ends, 20 supers, and 74 normals. And what we're doing is we're converting the coin value of those high end, supers, and normals, actually rather the items, into their coin value, and then dividing it by the amount of items that there are in the pipe. So that's how you get your coins per ruby total. Okay, and the average pipe is hovering right around 400 coins per ruby. And why this is important is because there's an alternative exchange between rubies and coins, and that exists in the form of Coin Rush, right? You can use your rubies to purchase a Coin Rush ticket, and that will give you access to the Coin Rush track, and you can collect the coins, which is approximately between 800 and 820 some odd coins that you can obtain on that track. But if we divide that by the 5 rubies that you would need to spend on the Coin Rush, you would see that it's under 200 coins per ruby. So the moral of the story is, unless you are absolutely desperate in purchasing an item in your shop that will have a direct consequence in adjusting your placement and receiving rewards for that change in placement, you will never want to use your rubies for Coin Rush. It is more than 2 times as worse than any pipe that you could pull on. So don't do it. And hopefully that clarifies the topic of coins per ruby for you. 97 Milo Production says, hi Kevin, my question would be, if a new Kong driver is released soon, say Cranky for example, very good choice there, how would you approach leveling them up? Ooh, this is a good one. Would you take them instantly to a decent spot, say level 4, I can tell, you know what you're doing out there, or go more or less? Of course, knowing that you love the franchise and would definitely invest into them. Same with the cart and glider, I guess. Well, you said it yourself, absolutely. This is what the plan would be. This kind of hitches on the back of Antenion's question, which is, okay, would I go for ACR? Absolutely. If there's a Kong on the badge, a complete spotlight set of high ends, 100% I'm going for the badge. How would I invest into them? Well, what I would do is I would obtain the set day 1, right? And I would invest into them as needed for ranked mode in that first week. And in that first week, I would grind out all of the ACR tracks that don't include those new items. So I would get all the things that I'm already invested into out of the way, cleared out. And then that would provide me with the optimal ground required to obtain the fairest rank group possible in the second week, right? Because I'm thinking about multiple things at once here. So I would want to keep those new items at the lowest possible level for the second week, and then I would go pedal to the metal there and take it to level 6 and triple cap it at a minimum. If the ACR grind is looking particularly close, I could do level 7 and triple cap the entire set as well. So that would be the plan forward. And I certainly hope that you're right and that it does happen soon. The next question comes from Queenof Carrots1. Hi Kevin, I noticed that you're very good at keeping up the non-stop combo by drifting and performing mini turbos, even when there are no turns on the track. Thank you very much. It's something, look, I'm not a natural with racing games, particularly Mario Kart Tour. It's flattering that you would compliment me on my skills there. If anything, that just speaks to the amount of practice and determination I had, because I was just not very good for many, many months of playing. Is there a possibility that you would make a tutorial on how to do that? Thank you as always for the excellent videos. Well, you're most welcome, and certainly it's a consideration to make a tutorial of this. Now certainly I'm not the most skilled player out there in terms of doing lines. Like, you know, first and foremost I would recommend watching the play of someone like Carlos85. He's incredible. He's been playing for a lot longer. He has a lot more skill than I do, so you can learn a lot more from what he can show you than from what I can show you. However, certainly being someone that isn't a natural at the game, perhaps maybe the kind of instruction I could offer would be fruitful. And for those of you in the audience that have trouble maintaining combo or getting the maximum score possible given your situations with inventory and whatnot. So it is a consideration, particularly as I interact with more of you and I hear the demand for that. That is a consideration for the future. It's not on the top of the agenda at the moment, but if it is something that there's a very strong demand for, I would certainly love to make that content, and hopefully that could clarify some things. Actually, what I could do in the meantime, instead of doing dedicated content, maybe I could just add some context of when I'm doing my races about some things that I'm looking at or doing from like a feel perspective in terms of maintaining combo and things of that kind. So thank you for the question. Next up, we have aturtledude, new subscriber to the channel, and he had a wonderful question that led to a dedicated video recently. So I'm curious to see what you have to ask here. You are always very precise, or I have a very precise estimate of which score I can achieve with or without investment. Could you guide us through your thought process? Do you use a particular tool for that? And do you estimate the number of actions you can achieve based on a few test runs? Certainly, let's go through it. Well, first of all, I have a good intuition with this on a basic level. Just playing the game for over a year, as much as I have, you kind of get a good sense of where you're going with things. I also have a good group of friends that I can just ask right away, what do you think I could get? And they're very precise, probably more precise than I am at estimating as well. That's why I'm asking them in the first place. And then, do I use a particular set of tools? Well, I have made some use of tools. Certainly the Frenzy Fans score predictor that they've put out, it's in the link of all their videos. And they offer an explanation for it in their videos. So certainly worth checking out. We talked about it many months ago. He came to me and said, hey, I have this resource, you know, would you consider covering it? And certainly I would have covered it sooner, but often as a free-to-play player, I find that it doesn't give the complete view because it is based on trial runs and pinpointing your exact bonus points per action. And I find that the calculator is enormously accurate when you have all top shelf, but you see my tour loadouts week in and week out. A lot of times I have bottom shelf or middle shelf, and then that plummets the bonus points per action. And then it's just guess and check anyway. So certainly, actually, maybe I could cover like a free-to-play version of their spreadsheet. Like, how do you analyze this from the free-to-play perspective? Because it is a challenge. And then the other resource that I make use of in tandem with the Frenzy Fans predictor is DKR's heat map. And what this does is this tells me the amount of actions I could possibly achieve in a race. I usually don't go for the maximum because my skill and my loadouts often aren't conducive to the absolute maximum, so I often dial it back. I do conservative predictions. Sometimes they're too conservative. I'm like, oh, I can't score an ounce over 74K, and it's like, hey, I scored 78K. So, I mean, this sort of thing happens all the time. But yeah, definitely check out those creators' resources because they're remarkable. And then absolutely, we do this based on test runs. So part of it is feel and experience, and then the other part of it are these sets of tools that exist out there. And I certainly encourage everyone out there to make use of them as well. So question 2, we know you're free to play. How much time do you spend per day on the game? being the extremely rational person that you are, not always, how do you come to terms with spending that amount of time on a mobile game? Extrapolating from the logic you use in your analyses, isn't time also a very valuable resource? Let's assume you didn't have this channel in order to make it more relatable to us by factoring out the motivation of helping the community. That's a really good point. Certainly the community, and like I talked about at the open, in terms of like when I get into the comments with you and I see that, wow, like, you know, the last so many hours of work that I put in have a direct impact on so many of you out there in a positive light. That's what spurs me on completely, right? And you know, there were many times when I was like, no mas, I'm done with the game, and it was the community that really, said, what you offer us is great. And I felt at those points in time, like back in May and in July, that there was still stuff left in here that I could offer everyone out there. Certainly things that I had put on Discord and just in like these big monologue type things, not in a formal guide, and that those became like the advanced theory video and the resource masterclass. And the buffing data that I didn't make a dedicated video for, and I instead opted to provide that context and resource information as we go through each tour. That's how I've decided to do it. And also that way, in case Nintendo is watching, they don't know exactly what I'm looking at, so that they can't, change, my ability to correctly anticipate some of these things as well. But yeah, I mean, this is a very good question. It's a loaded question. What I would say is that yes, okay, like, there's like the time is money concept. So certainly that's true. And how much time do I spend in the game on a daily basis? It varies, right? When I'm not feeling very enthusiastic, it can be less than an hour, right? And then sometimes, if a tour is really good, I really like the tracks, the ranked mode is really fairly competitive, then I might spend, 3 hours per day on the game, or even perhaps more than that on a single day at least. But certainly I've spent, there were times when I was super motivated, like a year ago this time. We had the, they had the brand new Kong that came in. I was very happy about that. I wish I was doing YouTube then, because I could have shared some really wonderful moments there. We had the first anniversary, and then Sunset Wilds, like all this great stuff was going on. Rosalina's Ice World, like new retros, like Kong characters. We just had a brand new King Bob-omb not too long before that. The anniversary free tickets were a thing. That, I mean, like the game was just at an all-time Maple Treeway, all-time high. Yeah, so back then I remember I spent probably 20 hours on Vancouver Velocity R on that one track alone in that ranked mode. So similar, Rosalina's Ice World T the first time, I spent about probably 16 hours on that track alone in ranked mode trying to get the double coin frenzy for that. So that's when my motivation was at its peak. But I do agree that the resources, or rather I should say that time is a resource, definitely. But also a lot of the time spent in this game is also kind of like downtime. It's leisurely time. It's time that you have to like dedicate to yourself, right? So in life in general, not just in this game alone, we can't distill everything down to, like its resource value, or like it's like mathematical value, right? Sometimes we have to just stop and smell the roses a bit. I kind of fumbled my way through that question. Hopefully that gave you the answer that I think we covered that all. If not, maybe you can refine the question and ask at the 800 subscriber Candid Kevin episode. Next question up is from The Apartment, and he asked, do you still own Diddy Kong Racing and an N64? We still occasionally do it all again. The Apartment, great supporter of the channel here. Thank you so much for all the comments that you leave. And he and his family, they grew up with Nintendo, Diddy Kong Racing, so perhaps he, more than others out there, can understand the sense of nostalgia that I feel for Diddy Kong and that character in this game. So unfortunately, no, I don't still have the N64 and I don't have Diddy Kong Racing for it, but I do still have Diddy Kong Racing for the DS. It's the inferior version of it, right? Because they didn't have the original cast. I know that they had more Kong drivers, and you would think that that's more palatable to me, which it is in some way, but we also lost Banjo and Conker, and that's a huge loss, honestly, because Diddy Kong Racing as a game launched the careers of those characters that were developed by Rare, who became sensational hits in their own right. So the fact that they debuted in Diddy Kong Racing adds credibility to that game, and it's part of the pedigree of what that character means, not just to the console itself, Nintendo and the company, but also the players such as us. So it's amazing that you still have the N64 and that you still break it out to play Diddy Kong Racing. That's really cool. To finish us off, we have King Zîàd, an amazing supporter of the channel, comments on all the videos, so thank you very much, Zîàd. He says, "Hi Kevin, what makes you love Mario Kart Tour and work so hard for this game?" Well, what got me into the game, as I've said already, is it's the characters, right? That nostalgia, transporting us back in time, you know, playing those console games with friends and family, the memories, the feelings that it sweeps up in us is certainly a major component of why I started. But why I keep going and why I go so hard, it's a multifaceted answer to that. And part of it is I play the game casually, as you know, but I am a competitive-minded player. I cannot shut it off. There is like a dial where I can turn it up and down, but it's always going to some degree. I can't turn it off. So I do have a competitive side in me. So that is part of it. But for Mario Kart Tour, I have the competitive side dialed down way low, and that's because as I've gained experience in the game, I've seen, you know, a lot of the predatory tactics in the game, like involved with the pipe pulls, just the pipe odds in general, and the value of those items and what they mean in the current tour and in future tours, and what they do in terms of like fear of missing out, the FOMO, a number of tactics that are used. Also, how they gear the matchmaking in ranked mode. It also ties into the pipes in the bundle packs as well. So I'm very cautious with that, and I always carry that context in with me, and that helps me to self-check myself greatly in terms of the appropriate amount of competitiveness that I apply to this game. But most significantly, the reason why I go so hard at this game is for the community. It's for all of you out there, and I would not be doing this still if it wasn't for you, if this wasn't still benefiting players out there. And I'm constantly humbled by talking to new people and finding out that I made an impact on so many people, and globally too. It's difficult to comprehend, honestly. I'm just so thankful for all of that support. And with that, we wrap up the first episode of Candid Kevin. It feels like I went way more detailed than I was planning to go with this, which is fine by me. Hopefully it's an enjoyable listen for all of you out there as well. So I certainly look forward to doing this again when we get to the 800 subscriber mark, which might not be too far off, because the support has been growing continuously, and I'm ever so grateful and thankful for all of you out there. I'm not huge on self-promotion and that sort of thing. I believe in the ideas here, and I believe that the things that I say, the things that I talk about are important. I'm not doing it for popularity, for clickbait, or to prove a point. I'm doing it because I feel it's important for people to know, and I feel that without the knowledge that's out there, people could get hurt or lose interest, or just not fully appreciate and enjoy this experience without knowing this stuff beforehand. And that's been probably my chief motivation in continuing to put out the content here. So thank you all so much for the support, and I will be seeing you all soon. Take care and have a good one, everyone.